You're scrolling Zillow on a Tuesday night, looking at yet another house in your price range that somehow sold in 3 days for 40,000 over asking. The buyer waived inspection. They put down 20%. And according to your mortgage calculator, they'd need to make about $12,000 a month after taxes to afford this place without being house poor. You refresh the page like it might reveal their secrets. It doesn't. Just sold in red letters, mocking you. Sound familiar? You've done this math 100 times. You've watched houses you can't afford get bought by people who, according to every financial calculator on the internet, shouldn't be able to afford them either. And you start wondering what's wrong with you. Why does everyone else seem to have figured out some secret pathway to home ownership that you're too stupid or too poor to find? Here's what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to reveal exactly who's buying these expensive houses and how they're actually affording them. And I'm going to prove with specific numbers why only about 20% of recent buyers are genuinely comfortable, while the rest are either hiding advantages you'll never see or quietly drowning behind those Ring doorbells and Tesla chargers. Let me start with the math that's making you feel crazy. The median home price in the United States right now sits around $420,000. That's the national number. In markets where people actually want to live, where jobs exist and schools function, we're talking much higher. Denver starter homes begin at 500,000 minimum. Austin, same story. Seattle, Portland, anywhere with economic opportunity, you're looking at 500,000 plus for anything that isn't falling apart. Now let's talk about income. Median household income in America is $84,000. The standard affordability rule, the one every financial advisor will tell you, says you shouldn't spend more than 28% of your gross income on housing. That's the front end ratio. 28% of 84,000 is $23,520 per year, or about $1,960 per month for your mortgage payment. Here's what $1,960 a month gets you at 7% interest with 20% down. It gets you a home priced at roughly $350,000. But we just established that starter homes in desirable markets begin at 500,000. That's a gap of $150,000 between what the median household can afford and what homes actually cost in places with jobs. You're not crazy. The math genuinely doesn't work. This isn't about you being bad with money or not understanding how to budget. The numbers are objectively impossible for most people. So here's the central question we're investigating. When median household income is 84,000, but median home prices require 140,000 plus in household income to afford safely, who's actually buying? And what invisible advantages or visible sacrifices are making it possible? But here's the part that'll make you angry. Only about 20% of recent home buyers are purchasing within traditional affordability guidelines without significant external help. 20%. That means when you see 10 houses sell in your neighborhood, only two of those buyers are doing it the way you think everyone's doing it. Let me break down who's actually buying. According to recent buyer surveys and income data analysis, roughly 25% are repeat buyers with substantial equity from homes purchased 10 to 15 years ago. They're not earning their way up. They're riding a windfall. Another 30% receive family financial assistance, down payment gifts, cosigners, trust fund draws, inheritance acceleration, money that doesn't show up on their pay stubs but shows up in their bank accounts. About 15% are genuinely high income professionals. These are doctors, tech workers, dual income couples both earning six figures. They actually do make $150,000 to $200,000 household income. They exist, but they're rare. And the remaining 30% are stretching beyond recommended ratios, often dangerously. Now, here's the math that should change how you see yourself. If you remove the equity holders and the family money recipients, the pool of regular income buyers shrinks to maybe 45% of total buyers, and half of those are overstretching. That means the comparison pool you're measuring yourself against, the people who make you feel like you're falling behind, that pool is an optical illusion. You're not competing against normal people with normal incomes making normal financial decisions. You're competing against equity windfalls, inheritance, family wealth, and people volunteering for financial disaster. When you understand that, your entire relationship to this market should shift. Let me show you what that equity windfall actually looks like in practice. Sarah and Mike bought a Portland starter home in 2012 for $285,000. It was a stretch for them then. Small house, not their dream neighborhood, but it was what they could afford on their combined income of 75,000. By 2024, that home was worth $625,000. They didn't do anything to earn that appreciation. They didn't get promoted 12 times. They didn't start a business. They just existed in that house while the market exploded beneath them. They sell net $340,000 in equity after closing costs, and suddenly they're buyers with a massive down payment that looks like normal financial planning, but is actually a lottery ticket they bought at the perfect moment. Here's what that equity does for them. They take that $340,000 and put it down on a $700,000 house. Now they're only financing $360,000. At 7% interest, that's a monthly payment of about $2,400 instead of $4,600. They look responsible. They look like they did it right. Their friends see them buying a $700,000 home and think they must be incredibly successful. But they didn't earn that equity through wages or savings. They earned it through temporal luck. They happened to buy when houses were cheaper. And that's it. That's the entire explanation. Now let me show you the timing brutally. If Sarah and Mike had bought that same starter home in 2022 instead of 2012, they would have paid $625,000 for it. Today, that home might be worth $640,000. They'd currently be barely breaking even, maybe even underwater, depending on what they paid in closing costs and realtor fees. They'd have no equity to leverage upward. They'd be trapped in that starter home, watching prices climb away from them just like you are right now. These aren't successful people who worked harder than you. They're lottery winners who bought tickets when tickets were cheap. You're comparing your 2024 starting position to their 2012 starting position, which is like comparing your height to someone standing on a ladder, and then wondering why you're shorter. The unfairness of this should make you furious. But what should make you more furious is the second invisible mechanism, the family money you cannot see. The National Association of Realtors reports that about 23% of recent first-time buyers received down payment help from family. But qualitative research suggests the real number is much higher because loans from parents that are never repaid don't show up as gifts in surveys. Living rent-free with parents for 5 years to save doesn't register as family assistance, but it absolutely is. Let me show you how this works with Jessica and Tom. They're buying a $550,000 home in Austin. Their combined income is $95,000. When you see that house sell, when you see them move in, you think they must make way more than you. The math seems impossible otherwise. Here's how it actually works. Tom's parents gave them $60,000 as a wedding gift. That's the down payment. Jessica lived with her parents rent-free from age 23 to 28, saving $1,200 a month for 5 years. That's another $72,000 accumulated. They have $132,000 for down payment, which is 24% down. Their mortgage is now $3,200 a month instead of $4,100. Still tight on $95,000 income, but technically achievable according to lenders. Let me show you their actual budget. They make $7,900 a month gross. And after federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, Medicare, and health insurance, they're taking home about $6,100. The mortgage is $3,200. Utilities are $300. Car payments are $600. Insurance is $400. Food is $500. Gas is $200. Cell phones are $150. Internet is $80. Add that up. That's $5,430 in fixed expenses every month. They have $670 remaining for everything else. Clothing, entertainment, gifts, car repairs, medical costs, dental work, every single other expense that exists in life. They're contributing zero to retirement. Their emergency fund isn't growing, and they're one car repair away from credit card debt they can't pay off. Here's what that actually feels like day to day. It feels like splitting one entree when they go out to eat because 2 entrees plus tip puts them over budget. It feels like declining friends' destination weddings because they cannot afford the flight. It feels like a $40 unexpected charge on the credit card triggering an argument. It feels like guilt about buying new shoes when the old ones still technically have some life left. They're living in a beautiful house while experiencing poverty-level discretionary income. Their Instagram shows granite countertops and a nice backyard. You don't see the invisible subsidy from Tom's parents or the 5 years Jessica spent living at home. You don't see the financial fragility underneath the surface. You're measuring your progress against people running a race with a half-mile head start, and they're not wearing signs announcing their advantage. So you internalize your failure as personal inadequacy when you're actually just competing against inherited wealth. Now, let me show you what actual affordability looks like, because you need to see the income number required to buy comfortably. This is the part that'll shock you. David and Jennifer earn $185,000 combined in Denver. He's a senior software engineer. She's a nurse practitioner. They're in the top 10% of household earners in America. They're buying a $600,000 home with 20% down, which is $120,000 they saved over 6 years of aggressive saving. And their mortgage is $3,800 a month. Let's look at their monthly reality. They make $15,400 gross. After taxes, retirement contributions, and benefits, they take home about $11,200. Mortgage is $3,800. Utilities are $350. Car payments are $700. Insurance is $450. Food is $800. Gas is $250. Cell phones are $150. Internet is $100. They're putting $1,200 into retirement accounts every month. That's $7,800 in total monthly expenses. They have $3,400 remaining for discretionary spending, emergency savings, vacation fund, and home repairs. This is what comfortable looks like. They can absorb a $2,000 surprise expense without panic. They take 2 real vacations per year. They're contributing meaningfully to retirement. They're not arguing about whether they can afford to replace the broken dishwasher, but notice the income required. $185,000 household income. That's more than double the median. That's what the math actually requires to buy a $600,000 home and still have a life that doesn't feel like constant deprivation. If you're not making $160,000 plus as a household, you're not failing to buy. You're correctly identifying that you cannot afford it. Your instinct that the math doesn't work is accurate. You're reading the situation correctly. But let me show you what happens when people ignore that math. Let me show you the drowning 30%. These are buyers who stretched beyond safe ratios and are now trapped. They're spending 35 to 45% of gross income on housing. They took ARM loans or interest-only periods to quote-unquote afford the payment initially. They drained their emergency funds for closing costs, and now they have zero buffer. Here's what that looks like in practice. Couple makes $110,000, bought at $520,000 with 8% down. Monthly payment is $4,200, which is 46% of gross income. They cannot afford to heat the house above 64 degrees in winter. They haven't been to a dentist in 2 years. They drive cars with 180,000 miles because they cannot afford replacement. Their credit card balances are growing every month because the grocery bill doesn't fit in the remaining budget. They are one job loss, one major repair, one medical emergency away from foreclosure. But their house looks beautiful from the street. The lawn is mowed. The exterior is painted. Nobody driving by would know they're drowning. And here's the system's cruelty. Real estate agents, lenders, and sellers all profit when someone overstretches. Nobody in the transaction is financially incentivized to protect the buyer from themselves. The cultural narrative of "you're supposed to struggle for your first house" normalizes financial suffering that previous generations would have considered catastrophic. Let me show you exactly why you keep getting told you can afford more than you actually can. Real estate agents earn commission as a percentage of sale price. If you buy a $550,000 house, your agent makes about $13,750. If you buy a $330,000 house, they make about $8,250. They have a direct financial incentive to push you toward the higher number. Lenders profit from larger loans through origination fees and decades of interest payments. Sellers obviously want maximum price. Nobody in the transaction gets paid to tell you this is too expensive for your income. In fact, they lose money when they give you that advice. Pre-approval letters are designed to show you maximum borrowing capacity, not safe capacity. A buyer earning $90,000 gets approved for $450,000, but should probably buy at $320,000. That $130,000 gap is where financial lives get destroyed. The entire industry has reframed house poor from a warning into an inevitability. Everyone stretches for their first home becomes permission to make objectively bad financial decisions. Upgrade culture and HGTV expectations make buyers feel like basic homes are beneath them, pushing them toward prices that require sacrifice. Nobody profits from telling you to wait, to rent longer, to buy less house. The entire system is structurally designed to maximize transaction size, not buyer welfare. When you understand that, you can stop trusting the people who profit from your overextension. Let me give you permission to do something radical. You can choose not to play this game. If you're earning under 120,000 as a household, you cannot safely afford a 500,000 plus home without either invisible help or visible sacrifice. If you don't have family money, if you don't have equity from a previous home, if you don't have a trust fund, you are not failing. You're correctly reading the math. Buying when you cannot afford it doesn't make you an adult. It makes you trapped. Renting while you build actual wealth, invest in retirement, maintain emergency savings, and live without financial terror is not throwing money away. It's choosing liquidity and peace over forced appreciation and anxiety. You can rent and invest the difference in index funds. You can wait for market corrections or income growth that makes the math work. And you can move to genuinely affordable markets if your career allows it. You can buy below your pre-approval maximum instead of at the limit. You can choose a smaller home that leaves room for life, for savings, for resilience, for the ability to absorb surprises without catastrophe. The people buying homes you cannot afford either have advantages you don't see or are drowning in ways you don't want. Neither is a referendum on your worth or your financial intelligence. You are not in a race. You are making the financially intelligent choice to wait for math that works. Financial peace is worth more than forced equity. The ability to quit a job you hate is worth more than granite countertops. The freedom to help your parents when they need it is worth more than a two-car garage. An emergency fund is worth more than a Ring doorbell. Retirement contributions are worth more than appearing successful to neighbors who might be drowning behind their closed doors. You're not falling behind. You are refusing to volunteer for a trap disguised as success. And that refusal, that clarity, that willingness to see the math for what it actually is instead of what you wish it could be, that's the most financially mature decision you can make right now.